Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today being the afternoon of Sunday, the 23rd of November 2025, I greet and welcome you again to our channel where we tackle issues pertaining to innovations in technology, engineering, science, for the development of the continent of Africa and her children. Once again, I'd like to request you to like our videos that we've been making since the inception of this channel, to comment in the comment section below. Comment not only on content and the material that is delivered, but to also comment on the methodology and approach in which we deliver the product to you, to the rest of the continent, and ultimately to the rest of the world. And also, I'd like to implore upon you to invite as many people as you can within your networks who have access to the internet, and invite them to be part of this endeavor, to be part of this interaction, which I believe, which in my view is very critical for the development of the continent of Africa and her people. Without any further ado, because we always have limited time, I'd like to say that this time around, given the developments or the crises, if you like to call it that way, to characterize it that way, that's been happening in South Africa over the past few months, and particularly over the last couple of weeks and days, on matters of security and developments in South Africa, and by extension, by implication and extension, to the rest of the continent, since because that's the source, since the press briefing of the 6th of July by the Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Services in KwaZulu-Natal, General Nhlanhla Sibusiso Mkhwanazi. As you know, ours is not a current affairs channel, but we just cannot ignore those developments and expect to be taken seriously by anyone. And we'll take this issue as we tackle all other issues from the point of view of innovations in the sciences, engineering, and technology, and the impact thereof on these developments. Now, what's happened over the last couple of months since Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's address is that some very senior officers in the military, be it the Defense Force and most recently the Navy, Naval Forces, and perhaps we'll soon be hearing also from the Air Forces. They've been concerned by senior officers in these areas about the underinvestment, which they interpret, or they seem to interpret as a sinister way of rendering our security services weak paralyzed, incompetent, and incapable of executing their duties, and that is being done by limiting their access to resources that they need. And I'd like to, without taking a position in agreement or disagreement with any of those utterances that have been made by those officers, I'd like to say that for security and development in South Africa and the rest of the continent, as I have argued before, there has to be development and growth in the innovations in those armies. So in the military, in the Navy, in the Air Force, there must be significant modern innovations and developments, which, as I argued in another video, also have an impact on the economic and social development aspects of things. So it's critical that those investments are made. I think actually it's embarrassing what we've heard, that in some instances the military services even fail on on the provision of very basic necessities like fuel, tanks, military vehicles, and so on. But without dwelling too much into that, I'd like to say that I'd like this time around us to look at innovations in the army, in the military, innovations in the army, in the military, as a way of ensuring the security and ultimately development of African people. And that will not happen without the necessary investments. So I'd like to argue, as I've argued before, that when people look at this, and this has been explicitly and perhaps expressly and perhaps embarrassingly so by one of recently in one of the functions by one of the senior officers in the Navy, that unless we invest in, unless we protect and develop our borders and points of entry in those areas, we become exposed to all sorts of risks, and this is more than just the influence of illicit drug trade from South America, Europe, and other parts of the world, where we become facilitators, and as a country and as a continent, facilitators and worryingly even consumers, which impact on the development. So I like to argue in this episode, as we approach the end, brothers and sisters, that we look at this matter beyond fiscal considerations, that people who make decisions on these kinds of matters, that we realize that they go far beyond matters of budgetary availability and constraints. That's the point. That's the point that I like to make this afternoon, brothers and sisters, and that's what I like to. I know I'm visiting this particular topic for the second time around because of how critical I believe it is, and it's a pity that we have very limited time. But I hope you get the point that I'm making. I'm saying let there be investments in which will allow for innovations in the in the whole military, in the whole military setups, in the Navy, the Air Force, and the Defense Force, as concerns have been raised by senior officers in those respective areas of our military. And that's a very serious security measure. But security, not just necessarily in the narrow military sense, but in the broader social and economic development sense, because that's where the things will happen. That's what I'd like us to engage on, brothers and sisters. Investments in those technologies to improve, for us as a people in South Africa and in the continent to take charge of our security. Once you take charge of your security, then you can champion the development of your people. Let me leave it there for now. And if necessary, as I seem to think that it will become necessary again, we'll revisit this issue and this topic again as we monitor developments in our beloved country. Let me close off again and say Utemba Wagamataba as I sign off. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.